Today, I am going to go through the finance tech stack that I recommend to all of my students and also what I recommend to our clients, our founders. I do update this every 6 months, and so this is the latest installment. I've made a few changes to what we recommended 6 months ago. And again, this is a software we're using with our clients. So let's get started. Okay, so the latest update, I do say March here because I'm running a couple of weeks late. I was hoping to do this a couple of weeks ago, but I got distracted because I was in book launch mode, which I'll touch on at the end. I'm a fractional CFO and I also train new and aspiring CFOs. So this again is for startups and scale ups. It's not really for large corporations. You know, you probably have an ERP and all singing, all dancing in a huge budget. Startups and scale ups don't have that luxury. So this is why I like to update this on a regular basis, because there's always new and exciting things coming out. So, why is reviewing the tech stack important? So, rather than putting one in, I think everyone has a tech stack nowadays. It is worthwhile reviewing this at least every 6 months. I generally find this because sometimes the tech that you have put in place may not be working to its full potential. So sometimes I find that the process before the tech stack or the software is working and the piece afterwards sometimes can be really manual and you're not fully utilizing the software to its full potential. So it is worth reviewing that on a regular basis and making sure that any software that you have put in place, that you are using it to its full potential. It's also then making sure that your existing team is value add. So you may find that either they're still doing things manually or the software that you have already within your tech stack can be used to take over some of their manual tasks, or they're spending a lot of time on a task and you can look at streamlining that either through process improvement or putting in place some software. And then also tech is changing all the time. There are always new players. The most popular thing in the market will change 12 months later for something cheaper, slicker. So it is worthwhile reviewing because you may find that there may be a better and cheaper alternative to what you're using today. Before we go into the actual software, I do want to say that you need to check the processes before you start implementing software. So I have definitely started working for clients whereby they have a really powerful piece of software, but the processes before and after the software does its thing is really cumbersome and really manual. So sometimes, if you have a very manual process and it's not optimized before you put the software in, you may find that the software just exacerbates the problem. And therefore, it's not solving bad processes, it just makes it worse and more pronounced. So make sure you spend the time reviewing the workflows and the processes first before you start implementing software. If you don't do this step, you're just going to have more headaches afterwards. So this is very key that you can't skip this step. Okay, so the first one is the general ledger and ERP. So I find with ERPs, NetSuite, and in the UK, Sage Intacct seems to be the best players, particularly for scale-up businesses that are going from that small software to the larger one. And then at that earlier stage, Xero, I think Xero is the best. QuickBooks is also quite common, but I prefer Xero. I do have a blog post and I have talked about at what point should you consider moving up to an ERP. So I'll leave a link to that. But I will say if you can hold on to Xero for as long as possible, it is ideal. ERPs are very expensive, but they also take 6 to 12 months to implement. So you always need to take that into account when you're looking at upgrading. The next one is accounts payable. So Dext is very common in Europe for automatic incoming processes, invoices. Approval Max is quite good for purchase orders and approving spend. I am looking at Moss. That is the full P2P procure to pay process. So rather than having multiple softwares for the P2P procure to pay process, Moss seems to have it all in one. So we are testing that. So far so good, but I just wanted to caveat it. It's not a full recommendation just yet. In the US, I like bills.com. That one is the slickest. I don't see a better alternative at the moment. And then if your bank doesn't allow for batch uploads in the UK, then I recommend using Teleroot to help you with that. Manually entering in payments is not ideal. So if you can't do it automatically, especially with these challenger banks, some of them aren't as slick as, say, the banks that have been around for a while. The next one is accounts receivable. I haven't changed this one yet. Chaser and ChargeBee are the two that I'm using with our clients and continue to do so. I haven't seen too much movements in the accounts receivable side of things. So this is the same recommendation that I had not that long ago. Okay, payroll and expenses. In the UK, I really like BrightPay. It's very easy to use. If you only have, say, monthly staff, then your finance manager can probably run payroll in about half an hour. And it's very inexpensive. It only costs a couple of $100 a year, so it's really ideal. There are other players in there, but I find that they're not overly better than BrightPay and significantly more expensive. In the USA, Gusto is by far the easiest. Similar to BrightPay, they just manage everything for you. And if you are outside the UK, Gusto is also great because it helps you with all of your state registrations and understanding payroll taxes. I do recommend using virtual cards instead of expenses. Just because it's easier to control, and also it's much more automated from a finance perspective. In the UK, I recommend Spendesk, Pleo, and Moss, and in the US, I recommend Brex. Reporting and consolidation. So we are still heavily using Fathom for all of our reporting and consolidation. We find that at the moment, creating templates for all of our clients and then reusing them every single month and adjusting them where we need to. They're very slick. The boards, like the board reporting that we do out of Fathom. Obviously, the consolidation piece is really key. You don't want to be consolidating in Excel anymore. Spotlight is the same as Fathom. It has the same features as Fathom does. We just started using Fathom because one of our clients was using them. We've kind of stuck with it because we know Fathom quite well. Budgeting for a small company, Excel is still the best. We do regularly look for new budgeting tools. At the moment, I haven't found one that's either inexpensive or is as flexible as we need. Fathom, for example, does have budgeting. I don't really like it because it's not as flexible as I want it to be. And generally with startup businesses, the revenue model needs a lot of flexibility. So I just haven't found a great tool for that. So still in Excel. If you have a medium-sized entity, so a scale up, and you have about £1,000 plus per month that you can spend on a budgeting tool, then Mosaic and Casual are really good, and I would recommend those two to check those two out. We are currently, however, testing a cash forecast tool called Cashflow Frog. Again, we're just testing this. I can't do a full recommendation yet. We're testing it with a couple of our clients, and if we really like it, we'll roll out to everyone. I find that cash flow forecasting is the most important with startups and scale-ups because you want to understand the cash runway. So this could be really interesting, using a tool for the cash flow element and forecasting that using this tool rather than having to do a rolling forecast on a weekly basis. Okay, the next one is the cap table. So managing your equity, unapproved options, EMI options. I actually have changed this one. The UK parent entity, I prefer Ledgy now. Ledgy is a newer player. I prefer this to vested largely because of the cost and also it's a little bit more flexible. And it also links to a lot of the HR software that I'm using with a lot of our clients. So Ledgy is actually my preference for the UK. Carter is absolutely what you should use if you have a US parent entity. I would say the Carter option for a UK parent entity is actually quite good. They acquired CapDesk, which was the UK leader for a while, and so they've kind of fully integrated that. They are more expensive than Ledgy, but it is quite a good option, particularly if you have a UK parent entity and you're thinking that you may put a US topco above for exit purposes, then you may want to consider Carter instead. But Carter, as I said, Carter is definitely a good option for the UK. I just feel Ledgy is slightly better, particularly on the cost perspective. Artificial intelligence. So I use both Perplexity and ChatGPT quite a lot in my day-to-day work. Perplexity I use for instead of, say, Google search. So if I want to find certain documentation, if I want to see where I find legislation, if I want to find reports, then I would use Perplexity. It gives you a summary and then will tell you where it got all of its information from. So it links directly to sites. I have found Google is doing a bit more of that. It does have the artificial intelligence summary at the top. However, then going to its source, it usually just has one source or it just has hundreds of sources underneath. I prefer Perplexity now. For ChatGPT, I use that for coding. So anything in Excel or Google Sheet formulas that's quite complex, I just get ChatGPT to do it for me now. Summarizing reports and PDFs. As accountants and as CFOs, you get a lot of reports, a lot of research that you should spend the time to read. Sometimes you should read them and understand them in detail. Sometimes a summary is fine. So I use ChatGPT to summarize it for me. And if I feel that there's things that I need to look into a little bit deeper, then I will, or I'll get ChatGPT to give me more detail on that. Doing an executive summary, particularly if it's not overly too confidential, then I will get ChatGPT to do the executive summary for me. Usually I have to edit it, but it's a good place to start. Titles or heading ideas, ChatGPT is quite good for that. Even for pitch deck titles, they're quite good. Ideas or frameworks for writing. I don't use ChatGPT to actually write things. Instead, I ask it to do a framework and then I easily write it. So anytime that I'm writing a report or even a policy, I will tell ChatGPT what I want the report or policy to say and what I want it to include, and then I ask it to do a framework for me. So whether it's subtitles and then a couple of points that should be included in those subtitles, and then I write it from there. Generally, I find if ChatGPT writes it, it's not quite right and you have to edit it anyway. I prefer it to be a bit more natural. I prefer to write it, but I like ChatGPT to give me the framework. And then I find that writing is so much easier by doing it this way. So time management, I have been using Trello quite a lot for team tasks. We are actually now testing ClickUp with one of our clients. They have quite a lot of tasks there and there are a lot of projects, and so they are using ClickUp internally. We've decided to test ClickUp within the finance function for this particular client, and I'm interested to see how that's working. And if it works quite well, then I may replace Trello with ClickUp. Trello's been quite good, but I do find as far as time management is concerned and having to push back the reprioritize tasks, it hasn't been as good and it's harder to communicate, particularly to our clients, how long it's going to take us to do something. Whereas ClickUp, I'm hoping will give us a better visualization. So I am planning on testing this one again, and in 6 months' time, I'll let you know if this will be in full implementation or not. And then finally, I just wanted to say that all of the tech processes and tech stack, so as far as going through all of the processes, all of the different things that you can think about in the tech stack, I did go through in quite a bit of detail. There's a whole chapter on it in the Financial Leadership Fundamentals book that launched last week. I was going to say last month, but it was last week. So if you're interested in reading more about financial leadership, and again, the finance tech stack is in there, then click on the link below. I'll leave a link on how you can either download or get yourself a copy of the FLF book. Anyway, that was the latest update of the finance tech stack from me. Hopefully you found that useful. I would love to hear any recommendations, so please do leave them below. If there's any tech stack that you just love, then let me know. Otherwise, don't forget to click subscribe, and I'll see you next week.